Have you ever noticed how easily you offer patience to someone you love, yet how quickly you become harsh with yourself? You forgive another person for being tired, confused, or afraid, but when you feel those same things, you may quietly decide that something is wrong with you. You may tell yourself that you should be stronger, calmer, more successful, more certain, or more lovable than you are right now. And perhaps this has become so familiar that you no longer recognize it as suffering. You may wake up carrying an invisible pressure to prove that you deserve your place in the world. You try to be useful. You try to be agreeable. You try not to disappoint anyone. You measure your value through the reactions of others, and when someone becomes distant, critical, or uninterested, you begin searching yourself for what you did wrong. Little by little, you learn to leave yourself behind. You say yes when something inside you is saying no. You remain silent when your heart wants to speak. You accept behavior that hurts you because you fear losing the relationship. You hide your sensitivity because the world has convinced you that tenderness is weakness. You become so busy trying to be loved that you forget to ask whether you are treating yourself with love. This is not a personal failure. It is simply a pattern that many people learn. From an early age, you may have received the message that love had to be earned. Perhaps you were praised when you performed well, behaved properly, or made life easier for others. Perhaps you were criticized when you expressed anger, sadness, fear, or uncertainty. And so you began shaping yourself into the person you believed you needed to be. But beneath all those adjustments, your true self remained. It did not disappear when someone rejected you. It was not damaged by your mistakes. It did not become less sacred because you made choices you now regret. Like the sky behind passing clouds, the deepest part of you remained open, whole, and quietly connected to something greater. You may call that greater presence God, Spirit, Source, love, or simply the mystery of life. The name is less important than the recognition that your existence did not begin with the opinions of other people. Before anyone judged your appearance, your personality, your choices, or your worth, life was already expressing itself through you. There is something deeply peaceful in remembering this. A tree does not ask the forest whether it deserves sunlight. A river does not apologize for taking the path that allows it to flow. A flower does not compare itself with another flower before opening. Nature seems to understand that life does not need to prove its worth. It simply expresses what it is. And perhaps you are being invited to remember the same truth. Cherishing yourself does not mean believing that you are better than anyone else. It does not mean ignoring your mistakes or refusing to grow. It means meeting yourself with the same reverence you might offer a sacred place. It means recognizing that growth does not require cruelty. You do not have to hate who you are in order to become more aware. Respecting yourself begins in small, quiet moments. It begins when you notice the voice in your mind that says you are not enough. So instead of fighting that voice, you simply become aware of it. You may ask, is this really my truth? Or is this an old belief I have carried for many years? Awareness creates a little space between you and the thought. In that space, you begin to realize that you are not the criticism. You are the one who is noticing it. You are not the fear. You are the presence observing the fear. You are not the story that says you must earn love. You are the awareness in which that story appears. This is where your freedom begins. Imagine that you are sitting beside a quiet lake. The surface has been disturbed by wind, rain, and falling branches. For a while, the water appears restless and unclear, but the lake does not need to fight the waves. When the disturbance passes, the water naturally becomes still. Your inner life is much the same. You may have been disturbed by rejection, comparison, disappointment, loss, or years of trying to please everyone around you. Yet beneath those movements, there is a stillness that has never left. You do not have to create it. You only have to stop running long enough to notice it. Perhaps the question is not, how can I become worthy of love? Perhaps the deeper question is, what would remain if I stopped believing I was unworthy? You may discover that what remains is not emptiness, it is peace. It is a quiet warmth. It is the recognition that you belong to life, not because you have earned belonging, but because you are life. There may still be days when you doubt yourself. There may still be moments when you seek approval or fear disappointing someone. Self-respect does not require perfection. It asks only for honesty. It invites you to notice when you are abandoning yourself and gently return. You return by listening inwardly. You return by allowing your feelings to exist without making them your identity. You return by remembering that your needs are not burdens, your boundaries are not acts of rejection, and your sensitivity is not something to hide. You return by speaking to yourself as you would speak to someone who had suffered and was trying to find their way home. And this may be the beginning of a new relationship with yourself. Not a relationship built on constant improvement, but one built on remembrance. You are not trying to become sacred. You are remembering that you already are. You are not trying to manufacture worth. You are releasing the beliefs that prevented you from feeling it. As you move deeper into this reflection, you may begin to see that the greatest obstacle to self-love is not the world outside you. It is the collection of fearful thoughts that the ego has taught you to believe. And when those thoughts are finally seen clearly, something within you begins to loosen. The ego rarely announces itself as the enemy of peace. It often speaks in a voice that sounds reasonable. It tells you that you must protect yourself, prove yourself, control the outcome, and make sure no one sees your uncertainty. It says that if you can only become more impressive, more useful, more attractive, or more agreeable, then perhaps you will finally feel safe. But the safety it promises never truly arrives. There is always another person to impress, another expectation to meet, another flaw to correct, and another future problem to solve. The ego keeps moving the finish line because its existence depends on the belief that something is missing. It cannot survive easily in the quiet recognition that you are already whole. You may notice this pattern in relationships. Perhaps someone you care about becomes distant. They reply differently, seem distracted, or no longer offer the warmth they once did. Almost immediately, your mind begins creating explanations. You wonder whether you said something wrong. You replay old conversations. You imagine rejection before it has happened. The emotional struggle is not only the distance itself, it is the story that the distance awakens within you. The ego may whisper, you are being abandoned because you are not enough. It may urge you to chase, explain, apologize, or become someone more pleasing. You may begin abandoning your own dignity in order to prevent another person from leaving. Yet a different perspective becomes possible when you pause and observe what is happening within you. You may notice that the fear is older than the present moment. The current situation has touched an old wound, but it did not create your worthlessness because your worth was never in question. The spiritual insight is gentle but powerful. Another person's distance may affect your life, but it does not define your being. Their ability or inability to love you is not the measure of your lovability. Their confusion does not make you unworthy. Their departure does not remove the divine presence within you. When you reflect from this place, you may ask yourself, can I allow this person to be who they are without turning their behavior into a judgment about who I am? That question begins to restore. Respecting yourself sometimes means allowing another person to leave without chasing them through every closed door. It means recognizing that love cannot be secured through self-abandonment. When you must betray your truth to keep a relationship, what remains may look like connection, but inwardly it becomes separation from yourself. The ego also expresses itself through comparison. You see someone who seems more confident, more peaceful, more loved, or more certain about their direction. You compare their visible life with your private struggle. You forget that you are seeing only a small part of their journey. Still, your mind creates the painful conclusion that life has given them something it has denied you. Comparison takes the sacred uniqueness of your path and turns it into a competition. Imagine two trees growing beside each other. One reaches upward quickly, while the other grows slowly and develops deeper roots. If the slower tree judged itself by the height of the first, it might believe it was failing. Yet its unseen growth may be preparing it to stand through storms that the other cannot endure. Your life may also contain seasons of invisible growth. There may be times when nothing appears to be changing. You feel stuck, uncertain, or left behind. Yet beneath the surface, something is being strengthened. Your awareness is deepening. Old beliefs are being questioned. Your dependence on approval is slowly loosening. What appears to be delay may be a season of rooting. The ego asks, why am I not where they are? The soul asks, what is this season teaching me about who I am? That shift does not deny your desire to grow. It simply removes the violence from growth. You no longer use another person's life as evidence against your own. You begin respecting your timing, your sensitivity, and the wisdom hidden in your experience. Control is another way the ego tries to protect you from fear. When life feels uncertain, you may attempt to manage every detail. You plan conversations in your head. You predict how people should respond. You imagine every possible danger. You believe that if you think long enough, you can prevent pain. But overthinking does not always create clarity. Often, it is fear circling itself. You may lie awake at night trying to solve a future that has not arrived. Your body is in the present, but your mind is living in imagined situations. You suffer not from what is happening, but from what might happen. There is wisdom in preparation, but control becomes painful when you believe that peace depends on life obeying your plan. A river does not know every turn before it reaches the sea. It meets the rock, curves around it, and continues. Its power does not come from controlling the landscape. It comes from remaining in motion and trusting its own nature. Perhaps your life is asking for a similar trust. This does not mean becoming passive or careless. It means acting where action is possible and releasing what does not belong to you. You can speak honestly, but you cannot control how someone receives your words. You can offer love, but you cannot force another person to open. You can make a thoughtful decision, but you cannot guarantee every result. The ego wants certainty before it allows peace. The deeper self discovers peace even while uncertainty remains. When you respect yourself, you stop demanding that you know everything before taking the next honest step. You begin trusting that awareness will meet you as you move. You may not see the entire path, but perhaps the light within you is meant to illuminate only the ground directly ahead. Fear also persuades you to attach your identity to what you possess, what you have achieved, or the role you perform. You may identify yourself as the strong one, the helpful one, the successful one, the responsible one, or the person who never needs support. These roles may have served you, but when they become your identity, they create a quiet prison. What happens when the strong one feels tired? What happens when the helpful one needs help? What happens when the person who has always known the answer becomes uncertain? The ego interprets these moments as weakness. The soul may see them as invitations to become more honest. Perhaps you have spent years being dependable for everyone around you. People call when they need advice, support, or reassurance. You listen, comfort, and carry more than anyone realizes. Yet when you begin to feel exhausted, you criticize yourself for not having more to give. The situation is simple. You are tired. The emotional struggle begins when you believe that being tired means you are failing. A new perspective appears when you remember that your humanity is not an obstacle to your spirituality. Needing rest does not make you selfish. Feeling sadness does not mean you have lost your connection to peace. Asking for help does not reduce your strength. Even the earth rests between seasons. The garden does not bloom every day of the year. There are seasons when it appears empty, yet life is still present beneath the soil. Rest is not the absence of growth. Sometimes it is the condition that allows growth to continue. When you honor your limits, you are not rejecting life. You are listening to life as it moves through you. This is a form of self-respect that the ego may resist because the ego wants value to be proven through constant usefulness, yet your worth is not determined by how much you can carry. You do not become more sacred by becoming more exhausted. Awareness begins to loosen these patterns because awareness does not condemn what it sees. When you notice yourself comparing, you do not need to shame yourself for comparing. When you notice yourself seeking approval, you do not need to criticize yourself for needing reassurance. When you notice yourself trying to control the future, you do not need to create another battle within your mind. You can simply observe. This is the quiet power of awareness. It brings light without violence. Imagine entering a dark room. You do not fight the darkness or demand that it explain itself. You turn on a light, and the darkness naturally disappears. In the same way, when you bring clear attention to an ego pattern, it begins to lose its unconscious control. You may say, I notice that I am afraid of disappointing this person. You may say, I notice that I am comparing my path with someone else's. You may say, I notice that I am trying to control what cannot be controlled. These simple acknowledgments create space. They remind you that the pattern is present, but it is not the whole of who you are. You are the awareness that can see the fear. You are the presence that can witness the comparison. You are the stillness beneath the need to control. The ego depends on your complete identification with its voice. The moment you observe it, you are no longer trapped inside it. You have stepped into a larger consciousness. From there, you can choose differently. You can choose not to send the message written from panic. You can choose to rest before saying yes. You can choose not to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You can choose to celebrate another person without using their success as evidence of your failure. You can choose to let uncertainty remain without filling it with disaster. These choices may appear small, but spiritually, they represent a return to yourself. Each time you refuse to abandon your inner truth for temporary approval, self-respect grows. Each time you respond to fear with awareness instead of obedience, inner freedom expands. Each time you release the need to prove your worth, you move closer to peace. There may be discomfort in this process. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may not understand your new honesty. Someone may call you distant when you stop overgiving. Someone may call you selfish when you begin honoring your needs. The ego may panic and tell you that you are losing love, but perhaps what you are losing is not love. Perhaps you are losing the habit of confusing approval with love. Real love does not require you to disappear. Real love allows truth, space, dignity, and freedom. It does not ask you to become smaller so another person can remain comfortable. It does not demand that you silence your soul to preserve an appearance of harmony. Harmony with the source begins as harmony within yourself. It begins when your thoughts, words, and actions are no longer in constant conflict. You may still feel fear, but you do not let fear make every decision. You may still desire connection, but you do not sacrifice your dignity to receive it. You may still experience uncertainty, but you stop treating uncertainty as proof that life has abandoned you. The ego says, protect yourself by closing your heart. The deeper self says, keep your heart open, but remain rooted in truth. This is the balance of love and self-respect. An open heart does not mean an unguarded life without wisdom. A tree opens its branches to the sky, but it also remains rooted in the earth. In the same way, you can be compassionate without accepting harm. You can forgive without returning to unhealthy patterns. You can love someone and still choose distance. Self-respect does not harden you, it stabilizes you. It allows you to meet life without constantly negotiating your worth. You stop asking, what must I become so that I will be accepted? Instead, you begin asking, what choice allows me to remain aligned with love and truth? And as this awareness deepens, you may discover that the ego was never something you needed to destroy. It was a frightened part of your human experience trying to keep you safe through control, comparison, and approval. You can meet it with compassion. You can thank it for trying to protect you while no longer allowing it to lead your life. Then something begins to change. The inner struggle softens. The voice of fear is still heard, but it is no longer mistaken for wisdom. Beneath it, a quieter voice becomes recognizable. It does not shout. It does not threaten. It simply reminds you that you have never been separated from the love you were seeking. And when you are ready to listen more deeply, that quiet voice begins guiding you home. Returning to your true self is not a journey toward a distant destination. It is a movement inward. It is the gentle release of everything you learned to become in order to feel accepted, protected, or worthy. Beneath the roles, the defenses, the expectations, and the old stories, there is a presence within you that has never been damaged. That presence does not need to be repaired. It needs to be remembered. You may have spent years believing that healing meant becoming someone entirely different. You imagined that one day you would no longer feel fear, sadness, anger, or uncertainty. You thought peace would arrive when every wound disappeared and every question was answered. But perhaps healing is not the absence of difficult feelings. Perhaps it is the ability to remain connected to yourself while those feelings move through you. The ocean does not lose its depth because waves appear on its surface. In the same way, your deepest nature is not disturbed by every emotion that passes through your awareness. You can feel grief without becoming grief. You can experience fear without allowing fear to define you. You can feel disappointment and still remain connected to love. This understanding becomes especially important when you begin to forgive. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. You may believe that forgiving someone means pretending that nothing happened, accepting harmful behavior, or allowing the person back into your life. Yet forgiveness does not require you to deny your pain. It does not ask you to abandon wisdom. Forgiveness is the decision to stop carrying the wound as your identity. Imagine holding a heavy stone because someone once placed it in your hands. At first, the stone represents what happened. Over time, you become so accustomed to its weight that you forget you are still carrying it. You may believe that releasing it would somehow excuse the person who hurt you, but the stone is no longer affecting them. It is affecting the way you walk through life. When you forgive, you are not saying that the pain was acceptable. You are saying that the pain will no longer control your inner world. You are choosing peace over continued attachment to the past. This may happen slowly. Some wounds cannot be released through a single decision. They need to be met with patience. You may forgive in layers. One day you release the anger. Another day you release the need for an apology. Later, you release the fantasy that the past could have been different. Each release returns a little more energy to your life. And often, the person you most need to forgive is yourself. You may still be judging choices you made years ago. You remember the relationship you stayed in too long, the opportunity you did not take, the words you wish you had said differently, or the moment fear made the decision for you. You look back with the awareness you have now and condemn the person you were then. But that version of you did not have the awareness you have today. You were responding from the understanding, fear, and emotional resources available to you at that time. This does not remove responsibility. It simply replaces cruelty with compassion. A seed does not apologize for not yet being a tree. It grows according to its season. Perhaps you can look at your past self in the same way. You were learning, you were reaching for love, safety, or belonging, even when you chose paths that could not truly provide them. You may not need to excuse every choice, but you can understand the longing beneath it. Self-forgiveness begins when you stop using yesterday as a weapon against today. You can say, I wish I had chosen differently, and I am willing to love the person who did not yet know how. This is not weakness, it is spiritual maturity. When guilt becomes wisdom, it has served its purpose. When it becomes a permanent identity, it separates you from the present moment. You cannot fully cherish yourself while constantly dragging an old version of yourself before an inner judge. You are allowed to learn and continue. You are allowed to become more aware without hating who you once were. As forgiveness opens space within you, surrender becomes possible. Surrender does not mean giving up on your life. It means giving up the exhausting belief that you must control every detail in order to be safe. It means releasing your grip on how things must happen and becoming available to how life is actually unfolding. Perhaps you are waiting for a relationship to change, a decision to become clear, or an uncertain season to end. Your mind keeps searching for guarantees. You believe that once you know what happens next, you will finally rest. But life rarely offers complete certainty. The invitation may be to rest before certainty arrives. Think of a leaf floating on a river. It does not know where the water will carry it, but it does not resist every turn. It moves with the current while remaining fully itself. Surrender is not becoming powerless. It is recognizing the difference between participating in life and fighting life. You still make choices. You still speak, act, and set intentions, but you stop demanding that the universe follow your preferred schedule. This is where intention becomes different from control. Control says, this must happen exactly as I have imagined, or I cannot be at peace. Intention says, I will align myself with love, honesty, and awareness, and I will remain open to the form life chooses. You may intend to create a peaceful relationship, but you cannot force another person to become emotionally available. You can, however, become more honest, compassionate, and respectful within yourself. You may intend to find purpose, but purpose does not always appear as one dramatic calling. Sometimes it reveals itself through the quality of presence you bring to ordinary moments. You listen to someone without rushing them. You speak gently when irritation would be easier. You choose not to pass your pain to another person. You bring awareness into a moment that might otherwise have been lived unconsciously. Perhaps purpose is not always something you achieve. Perhaps it is the energy from which you live. When your intention comes from love rather than fear, you begin moving in harmony with the source. You may call this alignment, prayer, trust, or inner guidance. It is the quiet sense that your life is part of something larger, even when you cannot see the whole design. A thread in a tapestry cannot understand the entire image. It sees only the fibers beside it, yet its place still matters. You may also be living inside a pattern that you cannot yet understand. A loss, delay, or unexpected change may appear meaningless while you are inside it. Only later do you see how it redirected you, softened you, or returned you to yourself. This does not mean every painful event was sent to teach you a lesson. It means you have the capacity to discover meaning without allowing pain to become your permanent home. Trust does not require you to pretend that everything feels good. It asks whether you can remain open to life even when the path becomes unfamiliar. This is especially difficult during loss. When someone leaves, a relationship ends, or a season of life changes, part of you may feel as though your identity has been taken away. You miss not only the person or experience, but the version of yourself that existed with them. Grief becomes a sacred threshold. It asks you to release what cannot remain while honoring what was real. Like autumn trees letting go of their leaves, you may discover that letting go is not a rejection of love. The tree does not stop loving the season that has passed. It simply trusts that life continues beneath the apparent emptiness. You may never stop caring. You may never forget, but remembrance can become gentler. What once felt like a wound may slowly become a quiet place of gratitude. Love is not always proved by holding on. Sometimes love is expressed through release. You release the person you cannot change. You release the answer you may never receive. You release the need to understand why everything happened as it did. You allow the unfinished parts of life to remain unfinished. In doing so, you make room for peace. And as peace enters, you begin to see that self-love is not a private emotion reserved only for pleasant days. It is a way of standing beside yourself in every season. When you feel anxious, self-love says, I will not abandon you. When you feel uncertain, self-love says, you do not need every answer right now. When you make a mistake, self-love says, we will learn without cruelty. When someone rejects you, self-love says, their choice does not erase your worth. This inner companionship changes the way you experience life. You are no longer constantly searching for someone to rescue you from yourself. You are not demanding that every person reassure you, approve of you, or complete you. Relationships become freer because you are no longer asking others to carry the responsibility of proving that you deserve love. You begin to meet people from fullness rather than need. This does not mean you no longer need connection. Human beings are made for relationship, but connection becomes healthier when it is not built upon self-erasure. You can love another person deeply while remaining rooted in your own being. Two trees can grow beside each other without sharing the same roots. They offer shade, protection, and beauty, but each remains connected to the earth through its own center. In the same way, love allows closeness without loss of self. As you return to your true nature, you may notice that your boundaries become simpler. They no longer need to be fueled by anger. You do not need to punish, explain endlessly, or make someone wrong in order to protect your peace. You may simply recognize this is no longer aligned with the life I am choosing. Then you step away with as much compassion as the situation allows. Sometimes respecting yourself means staying and speaking honestly. Sometimes it means leaving quietly. Sometimes it means giving another chance. Sometimes it means recognizing that you have already given enough. There is no single rule for every life. This is why inner stillness matters. In silence, beneath fear and the opinions of others, you begin to hear what feels true. The voice of the ego is usually urgent. It demands immediate action. It warns that you will lose everything if you do not react. The voice of your deeper self is often calm. Even when it guides you toward a difficult choice, there is a quiet steadiness within it. You learn to recognize this difference through practice. You pause before reacting. You breathe before answering. You allow a feeling to settle before building a decision around it. You ask, is this choice coming from fear or is it coming from love and self-respect? You may not always receive a perfect answer, yet the question itself brings you closer to awareness. And perhaps this is what alignment truly means. Not living without confusion, but returning again and again to the most loving awareness available to you. You will still have human moments. You will lose patience. You will seek approval. You will become afraid and forget everything you have remembered. Then you will return. That return is the practice. Each time you come back to compassion, you strengthen the path home. Each time you forgive, release, trust, and choose truth, you become less identified with the frightened self and more available to the presence beneath it. You begin to sense that love was never something outside you waiting to be earned. It was the life within you, patiently waiting to be recognized. And as this recognition deepens, cherishing yourself becomes less of an idea and more of a way of living. It becomes the quiet foundation beneath your choices, your relationships, your healing, and your peace. The final question is no longer whether you are worthy of love. The question becomes whether you are willing to live as though you finally remember that you are. Living this truth does not require you to withdraw from the world or become someone who never feels hurt. It means carrying a quieter understanding into the life you already have. You continue working, loving, grieving, aging, making choices, and facing uncertainty. But something within you begins to change. You no longer meet every experience by asking what it says about your worth. You begin to understand that your worth is not being tested. A difficult conversation does not reduce you. A season of loneliness does not make you unlovable. A mistake does not erase your goodness. Aging does not diminish the life within you. The changing body, the shifting roles, and the passing seasons belong to the human journey, but they are not the deepest truth of who you are. Your true self is the awareness that has been present through every age you have lived. It was there when you were uncertain and young. It was there when you tried to please everyone. It was there through the moments you regret and the moments you cherish. It remains now, quietly watching, quietly loving, quietly inviting you back into alignment. Perhaps the simplest way to respect yourself each day is to create a little silence. You do not need to force your mind to become empty. You can sit for a few moments and notice your breathing. You can allow thoughts to pass without following every one of them. You can become aware of the space around the thoughts. In that space, you may remember that you are more than the voice that worries, compares, and criticizes. You are the presence listening to that voice. Stillness does not remove every challenge, but it changes the place from which you meet the challenge. Instead of reacting from fear, you give yourself a moment to return to awareness. You may begin the day by asking, how can I remain connected to myself today? This question is different from asking how you can impress, achieve, or satisfy everyone. It brings your attention back to inner harmony. Gratitude can also become a gentle way of cherishing your life. Gratitude does not mean denying what hurts. It means refusing to let pain become the only thing you see. Even during uncertainty, there may be something quietly supporting you. The breath entering your body, the light through a window, a person who listens, a lesson beginning to reveal itself, the simple fact that you are still here, still able to become aware, still able to choose love. When gratitude arises naturally, it softens the mind's constant demand for something more. It reminds you that life is not only happening in the future, it is here, in this moment, asking to be noticed. Forgiveness can also become a daily practice. You may notice resentment returning. An old memory may rise without warning. Instead of judging yourself for not being completely healed, you can meet the feeling with patience. You may quietly say, I am willing to release what I no longer need to carry. You do not have to force yourself to feel differently. Willingness is enough. Like opening a window in a closed room, even a small willingness allows fresh air to enter. There will also be moments when self-respect asks you to pause before agreeing. You may feel the familiar pressure to say yes, explain yourself, or make someone comfortable. In that moment, you can breathe and listen. You may ask, would this choice bring me closer to peace, or would it ask me to abandon myself again? Your answer may not always be convenient, yet each honest choice strengthens your trust in yourself. You begin to discover that you can disappoint someone without becoming a bad person. You can change your mind without betraying anyone. You can choose rest without needing to justify your exhaustion. And when fear appears, as it sometimes will, you can remember that fear is not a command. It is an experience moving through your awareness. You can feel it and still choose love. You can feel uncertain and still take one honest step. You can feel sadness and still treat yourself gently. The goal is not to become fearless. It is to stop allowing fear to separate you from your own heart. Over time, these small acts become a way of being. A few moments of silence, a sincere expression of gratitude, a willingness to forgive, a boundary spoken without hatred, a choice made from love rather than panic. These are not dramatic spiritual achievements. They are quiet returns to your true nature. And perhaps this is what it means to live in harmony with the source. You stop forcing life to prove that you are loved. You begin recognizing love in the life already moving through you. You trust that the same intelligence that opens flowers, moves oceans, and turns seasons is also present within your becoming. You do not need to understand every part of the journey to belong to it. You are not behind. You are not spiritually broken. You are not waiting to become worthy. You are remembering. As you move forward from this moment, perhaps you can carry one gentle truth with you. Cherishing yourself is not a reward you receive after becoming perfect. It is the way you accompany yourself while you are still learning, healing, and growing. Respect yourself enough to listen inwardly. Love yourself enough to forgive the past. Trust yourself enough to release what no longer belongs. And remain open enough to allow life to surprise you with paths you could not have planned. The peace you have been searching for may not be waiting in another person's approval or in some future version of your life. It may already be present beneath the noise, like still water beneath the waves. You do not have to create it, you only have to return. And every time you return, you remember that you were never truly separated from love. You were simply looking outside yourself for what had been quietly living within you all along. If this reflection has awakened something in you, share what you are beginning to remember in the comments. And subscribe for more quiet journeys into awareness, healing, and the peace that has always been part of who you are.